Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and our guest today is Craig Wichner, the co-founder and managing director of Farmland LP, which just won the Social Venture Network Innovation Award. Craig, thank you for being with us, and congratulations on that award.
Thank you. Very glad to be here.
It really is a big deal award, and I want to congratulate you on that again and emphasize to the audience that really the caliber of people that receive this recognition is extraordinary. These are people who are really making a difference in the world through social enterprise, and it is a meaningful award, and so again, I congratulate you.
Thanks so much.
So, Craig, tell us a little bit about what Farmland LP is. Give us the quick overview of what it is.
Great. So we buy conventional farmland and convert it to organic, sustainable farmland as an investment fund. And basically what that means is 53% of U.S. cropland is used to produce two commodity crops, corn and soy. That's not done because it's the most profitable way of managing farmland. It's just simply very operationally efficient and scalable for the farmer. Buy the biggest tractors that you can, you plant as much acreage as you can on the same crop, and just do that year after year after year. And you end up having to add a whole lot of chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, GMO seeds in order to make that system work. But it's just operationally efficient for the farmer. It results in, you're growing low-value commodity crops with actually very high and increasing input costs. That really squeezes the farmers in terms of the amount of money that they make, and then that limits the amount of rent, in essence, that those farmers can pay on the farmland. It kind of sets the price nationwide for what we think of as the value of farmland in the U.S. So it's very operationally efficient for the farmers to do that, but it's really the worst way to manage farmland as an asset. It's not as productive as it could be, and that's where we come in. We really look at farmland as this wonderfully productive asset that by using great sustainable agriculture practices that have been proven over literally thousands of years, that we can actually increase the farmland productivity, increase the revenue generated per acre, and increase the profits generated per acre for both the farmers and the landowners, that basically everyone wins by having professional management on that. And so that's basically what we do. It's a very large sector. There's $2.4 trillion worth of farmland in the U.S. To give you a comparison, that $2.4 trillion is about the same value as the value of all the office buildings in the U.S., or all the apartment buildings in the U.S., or all of the shopping malls and retail space in the U.S., other forms of commercial real estate. And the main difference is that, and 40% of farmland is leased, rented today as a productive asset, and it's almost a 0% vacancy rate. There's all good farmland is rented, and so we basically see this as a good form of commercial real estate that benefits from good professional management, and that's what we are using sustainable agriculture practices and actually creating a lot of opportunities for farmers.
This is really a fascinating business model. I see you there in an office environment looking very professional, and yet I hear you talking about operating the farm. I want to understand how involved you are in milking the cows, driving the herd, harvesting the wheat. Give me a sense of your connection to the earth.
Should I hop on my tractor right here?
If you've got it handy.
So I actually run the business side of Farmland LP, and my business partner, Jason Bradford, he's a PhD in biology, expert in sustainable agriculture. He runs the farmland management side of Farmland LP. And really what we're doing is actually, if you think of a farmer's job, okay, they have to manage the farmland, they have to produce the crops, then they have to sell and market the crops while running employees and all these other components, and it's really quite complex. And and one of their biggest challenges is actually growing their business. So me as a business person, if I want to double the size of my business, I have customer demand and I want to double the size of my business, I simply rent more office space, right? And I can grow. I don't have to buy a new office building every time I want to grow. Well, farmers basically have to buy a new office building whenever they want to expand. And actually, and it's even worse for organic and sustainable farmers. To get certified organic, it takes 3 years. So an organic farmer actually has to buy a new office building, buy some more farmland, spend 3 years converting that to certified organic farmland. Then that 4th year, double their sales so that they can catch up on all the capital costs and debt that they've gotten into. Hugely challenging. It's why there's such a big gap between the demand for organic food, which is 4% of the U.S. food budget is spent on organic food, growing at 16.5%, and only 1% of farmland is certified organic and growing at half of the rate of the market. So you have a big gap between demand for organic food and the supply that's coming online, and that's what we're helping those farmers do. We're buying large tracts of land that currently is used to farm commodity crops, converting that over to a much more sustainable form of agriculture, and then making that available to those farmers to double, triple, quadruple their production immediately without going into debt, so that they can then grow and sell their products without having to worry about the financing of the asset itself or the long-term management. Even organic farmers end up having to focus on their one crop, vegetables or sheep or cattle or chickens, but land is best managed when you have long-term rotations, 2/3 of the land in pasture with sheep and cattle and poultry. After 3 years, that land gets certified organic. After 7 years, that land's reached peak soil fertility. Organic vegetable farmers can rotate in on 10 to 20% of the land, use that soil fertility for 2 to 3 years, then rotate on to the next piece of pasture. We bring in a grain farmer after that, 1 to 2 years, 10 to 20% of the land, and then bring it back into pasture. The farmers are always having access to all this farmland, certified organic, sustainably managed at a large scale than they'd otherwise be able to afford themselves. The land is being the best taken care of, and the farmers don't have to worry about those costs. They just get to focus on growing the best kind of crops that they can and selling those to consumers who the demand for our farmers' products is far greater than the supply.
Well, what is the impact to the environment of organic farming?
It's really what's the impact by the annual commodity crops. So the major commodity crops, if you add up actually the 7 major commodity crops, it's over 80% of the U.S. farmland is used to grow these annual crops. I'm using the word annual crops because crops like corn are, and those commodity crops are planted each year and then harvested and then replanted the next year. So, and annual crops like corn use up soil fertility and they don't give anything back. So you have huge costs basically for tilling up the land, planting the seeds, putting fertilizers down, spraying herbicides, spraying insecticides, harvesting, and then they leave the land barren all winter long, where all of that runs off. Corn is very inefficient at using nitrogen. It uses between 25 and 33% of the fertilizer that's applied. What happens to the rest of it? Groundwater, surface water, causes all kinds of problems. The barren land, you have land erosion, you're depleting your soil carbon. Totally different than the kind of agriculture that's been practiced for 10,000 years, which is predominantly a pasture on cropland. And that pasture phase, we plant pasture once. It lasts for 7 years, and we have livestock grazing on it. It's net adding about $200 worth of soil fertility per year.
Wow.
It's sequestering carbon. It's purifying the water by having those deep roots that are there for so long. We don't have to use the fertilizers or the pesticides or the herbicides on there because we have diverse rotations. It's one thing if you have 5,000 acres of all corn, you're going to have a lot of bugs and insects around that want to eat that corn. You got to spray them. And in our system, we have a much more diversified model, so the predator and prey balance is much more in effect. The soil's healthier, you have fewer weeds, literally fewer weeds growing in healthy soil. If you add up all the impacts, we actually track 6 major metrics on it, and our type of agriculture is hugely beneficial in terms of carbon sequestration, in terms of lack of chemicals being added to the land, and in terms of healthy food being produced. And at the same time, we're creating 3 times more jobs per acre on our farmland while being more profitable for both the farmers and for the investors. So the key thing that we're doing is demonstrating that sustainable agriculture is more profitable than chemical-dependent agriculture. The kind of agriculture that we've had for the past 60 years, we think about it because chemicals were cheap. The land was fertile. Well, chemicals aren't cheap anymore, and the fertility has been used up. We have to go back to actually these good, sustainable rotations in our system, and the nice thing that we're demonstrating is that it's more profitable as well.
People have good reason to worry about food supply because there are 1 billion hungry people on the planet today, and almost everyone who thinks about these things agrees that we will have another 2 or 3 billion people on the planet in 30 years. So getting at productivity in farming seems to be critically important for all of us. And I think I hear you saying that you can produce more food per acre, and that in fact organic farming is a part of the solution, if not the solution, rather than the commercial, conventional farming, which a lot of people kind of think of as being the solution because you're producing massive amounts of food. Help me think about that a little bit, if you could.
Sure. And it's one of the funniest things that we hear primarily from corn farmers and the corn lobby, basically, which includes all the traditional cast of characters, is that, oh, we have to feed the world. GMO and commodity agriculture, we have to keep doing these things that are bad long-term practices, bad unsustainable practices, but we really got to feed the world, and we got to spread this to all corners of the globe. And here's the facts about corn production in the U.S., for example. 30% of U.S. cropland is used to grow corn. 40% of that corn is actually converted into ethanol. 40% of that is sold to feedlots. 12 to 14% is used to produce high fructose corn syrup. 4 to 5% is used to actually produce the seeds for the next year's crop. And humans eat less than 1% of the corn grown. And just the corn crop alone, if people actually ate it, you could feed all of Africa all year long.
Yeah.
Just the corn that's grown on 30% of U.S. cropland. But we don't use it for that. And in the process of growing all that corn, again, which we eat 1%, you're causing soil degradation, destruction of our waterways and environment, eutrophic zones, more pesticides in the environment. The atrazine problem in the Midwest is literally poisoning the water of the people who are living there. We're basically looking at a very short-term system and saying, oh, we need to, that's damaging. It's productive, but it's hugely damaging. We're saying, you know what, it's actually, and ultimately at the end of the day, you got to follow the money, okay? The seed companies want to sell seeds every year, year after year. The chemical companies want to sell chemicals. The tractor companies want to sell tractors. That corn farmer, they need to till their land and plant that corn and do all those passes of chemicals every single year, multiple times a year. we plant pasture once that lasts for 7 years. So we're much less input intensive. We use less fuel. We use none of the chemicals that they use. We don't have to buy their genetically modified seeds, which are modified to be more tolerant of the herbicides that they sell. So, and what we do is more profitable for the farmers as well. So that's what we're talking about shifting, and that's in some ways what we want our from a food security standpoint, we produce more food per acre. From a profitability standpoint, it's more profitable, and yet all of the government subsidies, we're more profitable without the subsidies. But it's the major commodity crops that actually get the subsidies as well. So we're looking at shifting that around.
So how do we get you to scale up, my friend? We would like you to be much bigger and much more successful. What do you need? How are you going to do that?
So we've been doing this 5.5 years. We own and manage over $50 million worth of farmland for our investors. We've set up a new fund, a much larger fund, a REIT, an investment vehicle that many people are familiar with, $250 million fund, and that will help start converting more land. And ultimately, at some point, we want to take that public so that anybody can invest in helping to have more farmland be converted to organic and sustainable agriculture. That's what we're doing directly. What we really hope and expect to be is catalytic. We're demonstrating that sustainable agriculture is more profitable than chemical-dependent agriculture, and we're doing this by making sure that all our financials are audited and letting people come onto the farm and see exactly what we're doing. And by having these audited financials, by speaking the language of finance and profits, we expect that to cause people who don't have any ideological game in this fight. They're just farmers. They just want to make more money. And that's great. And we support that. We want to be able to show them the path that there are other forms of agriculture that are much more profitable that they can shift to. And so we expect that to be a much larger conversion than we can do ourselves. Again, just in the U.S., there's $2.4 trillion worth of farmland, and a lot of different ways to own and manage that. And we'll have a fine business on our own, and hopefully make it very easy for anyone to be able to invest in the system. But I also have kids. Lots of people have kids. Really, we're talking about what's really going to make not only the economy better in the future, but also the world that we live in, the future that we're building for everybody, just like what you're promoting, what you're talking about. Really make the world a better place by the example that we're providing.
Well, that is an inspiring thought to end on. Craig, tell us how people can get in touch with you if they're interested in investing, interested in learning more, interested in a farm tour, whatever they might be interested in. How do people find you?
Great. The best thing to do is to go to www.farmlandlp.com. And we have a contact form there. We also have a news section, which is really a place that we blog and we write about what we're doing on the farms. Lots of pretty pictures. My business partner, Jason, is a great photographer in addition to being a PhD. So there's lots of pictures of farm animals and the stuff that's really happening on the farms and all the seasons as well. And we have a contact us page there as well that people can ask for more information or ask us questions.
Fantastic. Well, Craig, thank you again very much for being with us today. It's been a joy to have you, and we congratulate you again on your award.
Great. Thank you so much, Devin. Thanks for having us here.
All righty. Let's do some good.
Great.